FarAway Wanderers. Chapter 22. The Divine. Wen Kexing methodically sucked out all the poisoned blood in Zhou Zishu's arm and treated his wounds skillfully. He removed the other man's meridian blocking and took out a small medicine bottle. He swallowed one pill and put one more in his palm, holding it near Zhou Zishu's mouth while snickering, voice drawn out obscenely. "Come one, Asu, open your mouth." Zhou Zishu stared back with a sullen face. Wen Kexing, wholly energized as he was, kept on his blinding smile. Other man's stare could be a drill and it would not be enough to pierce through his thick face. He took a meaningful look at Zhang Chengling and deliberately lowered his voice. "We've already kissed and seen everything there is of each other, why are you still so shy?" Zhou Zishu took the pill and left without looking back. Wen Kexing then signaled Zhang Chengling, who was still standing there dumbly. He said, evidently in good spirits, "Seeing that your Shifu isn't running, this sure is a once-in-a-lifetime chance for you to follow him. What are you waiting for?" The sky had turned dark. The scorpions had lured Zhang Chengling from Dongting's gathering to way over here, and now he had no idea how far away he was, causing him to become extremely disoriented. After a while, Zhou Zishu returned carrying a few big hairs, and he went on to make food for the other two quietly. Wen Kexing said to Zhang Chengling smilingly, "Do you know what the second most adorable type of people is?" Zhang Chengling stared up at him. It made sense since Shifu was injured, but still, this man could easily rein him in without breaking a sweat. That really said enough about his ability. Furthermore, he didn't seem to be right in the head, so the boy was even more intimidated. He shook his head. Wen Kexing continued. "It's the type who's hard on the outside but soft on the inside then. Do you know what the most adorable type is?" Zhou Zishu, currently disemboweling the hairs with great skill, glanced at Wen Kexing coldly. "Stop spouting nonsense and go find some wood." Wen Kexing happily complied, but when he turned away, he still saw Zhang Chengling staring perplexedly out of the corner of his eyes. Thinking the boy was being curious, he explained in a haughty fashion, that type would be those who in addition have an incredible body to match. Zhou Zishu spoke up casually. "Don't listen to him boasting rubbish, kid." Zhang Chengling's uncertain gaze turned to Zhou Zishu. Did he understand this wrong? But clearly this man said. Zhou Zishu continued, "Distance yourself from him, lest he take an interest in you." Wen Kexing tripped on withered leaves and turned his head around, speaking as if he was hurt. "You've wronged me, Asu." Zhou Zishu pointed at the dead hairs. "If you don't go get some wood right now, I'm gonna open you up like I did with these little friends." Wen Kexing startled, running away while protecting his stomach like a skittish rabbit. Zhou Zishu found a creek to wash his hands, awkwardly wrapping the torn part of his sleeves back around his arm. The sensation of Wen Kexing's lips still lingered, and he was acutely aware that the man went as far as slightly licking the wound after he was done, causing his temple to throb. That move was clearly intentional. Zhou Zishu tore away the mask on his face spitefully and threw it into the water. This was the first time in his entire life did he come to know of such a bizarre man, who was so ravenous for another man's touch that he would gladly accept anyone within the vicinity, who let no chance of publicly flaunting his sexual appetite slide. When he turned his face sideways, Zhang Chengling recognized the familiar visage and happily shouted, "Shifu," as if he had only just now known that it was him. He fussed around the elder like a puppy, but still kept a certain distance out of caution. Zhou Zishu saw it out of the corner of his eyes and caved in, flicking his hand. "Come here." Zhang Chengling went to him animatedly and spoke in a sweet voice, "Shifu." After contemplation, Zhou Zishu said, "At your speed we won't be able to make it back tonight, so let's sleep out here and I'll return you to Suzhou in the early morning." Zhang Chengling's eyes instantly dimmed. He said nothing, only staring at his shoes instead in dejected silence. Zhou Zishu's easily persuaded soul couldn't stand this look from the boy, so he coughed and frowned. "What are you doing?" Zhang Chengling, head still down, answered quietly. "Okay." The boy went silent once more, sneaking glances at Zhou Zishu. He turned away once caught, mouth quivering, eyes blinking with a single tear clinging onto his eyelashes. Zhou Zishu leaned onto a tree and sat down. He had no idea how to treat this kid right. Did he end up like this because Zhang Yusen raised him like how he would a daughter, since maybe he was fated to be unable to have one? As a result, he grimaced and faked irritation. Stand up straight and raise your head. Zhang Chengling started, his back straightened immediately. The moment he raised his head, tears rolled down his face like a dam had burst open. Zhou Zishu got even more worried, his voice unknowingly softened. Wipe your face and man up, why does this make you cry anyway? Zhang Chengling wiped his face with much effort and got even more sullen because he couldn't get his face entirely cleaned. That seemed to be the last straw and he spoke between broken sobs, Shifu, she. I don't cry all the time, I. It's just that I saw you and felt really sad. I. Zhou Zishu felt a terrible headache coming up, so he averted his gaze with an indifferent expression, no longer keen on facing the kid. Wen Kexing returned with wood to this exact moment and was slightly stunned. The sky had turned completely dark. The sunlight was gradually disappearing from the horizon, leaving the western sky a gloomy ash-grey shade. The evening star was hung up on a tree branch and the wind began to pick up, spreading the feeling of coolness. Wen Kexing silently sharpened the wood and made a fire, putting up the hairs that were carefully prepared by Zhou Zishu and roasting it patiently. Then he started to hum an unfamiliar tune that somewhat resembled the 18 touches and completely suited his manners. Zhou Zishu sat beside him wordlessly, one leg bent and hands on his knees. Zhang Chengling sat next to them, trying his best to stop his sobbings. Note: a Chinese folk song. After a good while, the smell of meat started floating in the air, and Zhang Chengling's stomach rumbled loudly, causing him to blush. Wen Kexing looked at him and smiled, gotta wait a bit more, it's not fully cooked yet. Zhang Chengling nodded endearingly. Wen Kexing felt like he was even more well-behaved than a little rabbit, so he turned to Zhou Zishu, oh dear, hear me out. If he wants to accompany you so bad, why don't you let him? Why repeatedly come to his rescue if you want him out of your sight? Zhou Zishu slowly stood up and put his hands near the fire as the acupuncture points on his chest were starting to hurt, making him dread the chilliness. Wen Kexing kicked him with the tip of his shoes. I'm asking you here. I rescue him because I like to. Zhou Zishu answered, still sluggish. Zhang Chengling suddenly spoke up, his voice hoarse and trembling a little. Actually, you don't have to, Shifu, I only bring troubles. There are so many people who want to kill me, I'm not skillful at anything, and even led them to hurt you. Wen Kexing comforted him. Don't worry, his skin is the thickest out there, don't you look at me like that. Normal people only have a single layer of skin, unlike you who's like a whole rice cake, as if one isn't enough. At Zhang Chengling's astonished face, Wen Kexing continued his explanation patiently. Look at his arms, do you see how the color of the skin from his wrist down is completely different from his wrist up? You Shifu can't lie to save his life, but he's still not willing to reveal himself to me even now. Zhou Zishu ignored him and tore a part of the hare's legs to savor leisurely. When he was about to tear another, Wen Kexing flinched with distaste. It's not done roasting yet, are you a hungry ghost? Only when Zhou Zishu had swallowed the meat did he turn to Wen Kexing. Were you a woman in your past life, why do you smell of beauty products all the time? And regardless of all those handkerchiefs you have, stop with that motor mouth that's full of gibberish. Wen Kexing shut up instantly. A few minutes later, the hares were roasted beautifully with glistening golden skin, crispy outside and tender inside. Zhou Zishu called Zhang Chengling to join them, and 2 men plus 1 kid dove in completely unceremoniously since they were all ravenous after a whole day. Soon enough, there were only clean bones left. Now full, the 3 sat around the fire for warmth. Zhou Zishu leaned back and closed his eyes to rest, while Wen Kexing said to Zhang Chengling, "Why is your kung fu so bad? Didn't your father teach you anything?" Zhang Chengling mumbled. "He did. I'm just too stupid and lazy, so I already forgot most of them." Wen Kexing replied after some thoughts, head shaking. "When I was little and my father taught me things, I was lazy too, but I'm not really stupid." Zhou Zisha couldn't help but scoff, eyes still closed. Wen Kexing ignored him, judging Zhang Chengling head to toe, then said casually, "Do you want to learn something?" Zhang Chengling's head snapped up, looking at the man with shining eyes. The passion in his gaze turned Wen Kexing dazed with surprise. It had been a while since he saw that much honesty, perseverance, and reckless desire in someone. "You, kid, why did you suddenly turn into a wolf now?" Zhang Chengling abruptly knelt. "Sir, please teach me, I will do anything for you." Wen Kexing rubbed his nose and cleared his throat. "Look at you, I'm not interested in the younglings." A cough. The fire cast shades of red on the young boy's face, coating his still slightly childish features with determination, then vulnerability and imploration. Being stared at intensely like that, Wen Kexing reacted the same way as Zhou Zisha, which was turning his gaze away uneasily. After some hesitation, he sighed and stood up, dusting himself off and picking up a moderate wooden stick. "All right, I'm gonna teach you some moves. Watch carefully, I won't do them twice." To his promise, he demonstrated very thoroughly. Zhang Chengling didn't miss one thing, and started practicing on his own afterwards. He really wasn't a bright kid, and while Wen Kexing said he wouldn't repeat, he found himself correcting the boy and explaining to him in details. Zhang Chengling looked at him with his eyes bright, the excitement making his voice tremble. "Thank you, sir, thank you, sir," he repeated. Wen Kexing, evidently having never received that much gratitude, started revealing a rare cautious side of himself. They continued past midnight, but Zhang Chengling seemed to show no sign of fatigue, still practicing vigorously. Wen Kexing sat to one side in silence, his smiling expression vanished. He appeared to be deep in thoughts. Suddenly, he heard the gentle voice of the seemingly asleep Zhou Zishu. "Your last name is Wen. Who was the divine Wen Ryu to you?" Wen Kexing's whole body seemed to jolt. After a while, he lowered his head. "He was my father." Zhou Zishu, eyes now wide open, stared at his side profile. He spoke again with a much more serious tone. "I have always heard of and respected the divine senior Wen Ryu with his sword Dazzling Fall, who travelled with his wife and genius physician Gu Miao Miao to help those in need and later retired to a reclusive life. My apologies for having never realized that you're his progeny." End chapter. FarAway Wanderers. Chapter 23. Old Tales. Wen Kexing's smile seemed to be hiding unspeakable sadness. "I'm surprised there's still someone who can recognize his swordsmanship." Zhou Zisha fell silent. Not even Tian Chuang was entirely infallible. Had it been the case, then he wouldn't be able to escape in the first place. Though, it was 20 years ago when the swordsman of the Dazzling Fall secluded himself from the world, so no one really knew what happened with him and his wife since then. He quietly studied Wen Kexing. The other man was sitting by the fire, back curved. He was supervising Zhang Chengling's clumsy execution of what he was taught by his father long ago with a still, distant gaze. His aura exuded indifference and detachment, somewhat similar to how Wen Ryu's manners would be in Zhou Zisha's imagination. Then Wen Kexing began to sing. There was the millet with drooping heads, then there was the new sacrificial millet sprouting. I moved about idly, heart in turmoil. Those who knew me spoke of my sorrows, and those who did not said I was seeking something. O distant and azure heaven! By whom was this caused? There was the millet with drooping heads, then there was the new sacrificial millet sprouting. Note, from the poem/drooping millet, from the Book of Odes collection compiled by Confucius. His voice was pitched incredibly low and was a little hoarse, a little morose. It carried a sense of disarray with the mixed-up words, each phrase and sentence sounding like it was rumbling deep in his chest and stuck in his throat, refusing to come out. The fire crackled. Jiang Chengling turned to them to ask for instructions as he was confused about this one move, but his steps halted at the nearby singing. Back when King Ping of Zhou ruled over the country and having to move residents, legends had it that when the physician Chu passed by Zhongzhou, the crumbling shrines and palace brought sadness to his face. Seeing the ground overrun with weeds and millet, he thought up this sad melody. He mourned the buried halcyon days, for the past that was no longer reachable. Jiang Chengling, moved by the song, had numerous thoughts blooming inside of him. As young as he was, he didn't think he had the courage to return to the Zhang residence in Jiangnan, the place that held his precious childhood memories. It must have been in a great state of ruin by now, a burden that he had to carry to the end of his life. Zhou Zishu's eyes narrowed as he fumbled for the wine pot tied around his hip. He took a big gulp with his head tilted backwards, the spiciness rushing straight up to his head and gagging him, making him shed a few tears. Those who knew me spoke of my sorrows, and those who did not said I was seeking something. This line was sung by Wen Kexing over and over with a hint of self-deprecation. His eyes curved, as if he found it entertaining. What was he seeking, really? After a good while, no one spoke. When Kexing's humming died down, Jiang Chengling was already asleep, body tilted to one side, the tree branch he took passing now enveloped in his arms like a treasured sword. Something in his dream made his lips curve up and his brows furrow profoundly. Zhou Zishu stood up, shedding his outer robes and using it to gently cover the child. His head hung low as he sighed. Your father's dazzling Falls 18 patterns was said to have taken Jianghe by storm. Out of the 3 moves you have taught the boy, none of them seemed to belong to the patterns, but when I thought about it, the 18 patterns and its ever-changing nature all originated from those 3 moves. What excellent successor you are, brother Wen, to have surpassed your father. Wen Kexing's voice also lowered when he replied calmly. His swordsmanship is definitely not as good as mine, but he was good at medicine while I completely suck at it. The most I can do is bandaging wounds or battling a cold. Then he turned to face Zhou Zishu. Since you possess such keen apprehension of the old man's sword skills, what else do you know? Zhou Zishu joined him by the fire. He pulled up his collar and hid half of his hands under the sleeves while warming himself up. He spoke slowly. In Jianghu there is the elusive shaman medicine valley whose medication is almost indistinguishable from poison and vice versa, and there is also the divine medicine valley whose practice is solely to help people. It's said that though the latter is not well versed in martial arts, no one dare cross them. Your mother Madame Gu was the closed-door disciple of the Valley Master and rumoured to be the most beautiful woman when she was a maiden. Sometimes after there was news about her marriage, causing many hearts to break. Wen Kexing laughed softly at that, teasing, how does a grown man like you know so much gossip? Do you have nothing better to do with your life? Zhou Zishu smiled back, not really, that's why you're hearing all this. The two went quiet for a brief moment. Wen Kexing then muttered, those are all stories from so long ago. Perhaps they did share similarities, as when Zhou Zishu heard the others singing and sighing, he seemed to have understood something. He couldn't help but give a gentle reply, trying to be a little comforting, your parents were some of the rare good people in this world. They were a true match made in heaven, traveling across Jianghu together then retreating to seclusion together. Were I to have such a life, I wouldn't have any regrets even if I have to die tomorrow. Wen Kexing's smile was terribly faint. Good people. He looked almost dazed in the dead silence of the night. Can't believe after that many years there's still someone who remembers them and calls them good. Say, what makes a good person? Why do humans have to be good? Zhou Zishu was about to answer when he detected signs of movement from Jiang Chengling. The boy seemed to be having trouble breathing before the pattern changed. Zhou Zishu didn't have to look at him to know that he was startled awake by yet another nightmare. Jiang Chengling said nothing and merely curled in place, clutching at Zhou Zishu's robes and the tree branch while listening to them. At that, Zhou Zishu swallowed the words he was about to say. He thought over it carefully for a while, then replied in a neutral tone. Not everyone in the world is a good person, but a majority of them tries to be so, to the point that they're willing to fake it. He paused for a bit before continuing. As for why they do, I think it's because only when you are good to others will they treat you well in return. When you're good you will have friends, acquaintances, family, people who want to be near you, to be nice to you. Think about it, isn't it too miserable of a life if all you have is yourself and you treat everyone else with wariness? It's too painful, being a bad person. Wen Kexing was stunned listening to that. After a good while, he smiled and shook his head. Zhou Zishu said no more about it and added more wood to the fire. Wen Kexing's head lowered, eyes gazing at the sparkling flame. He shook his head again but more slowly. Finally, his arms crossed behind his head as he lay down facing the bright starry night. A long sigh was followed by words that were almost impossible to hear. Fair enough. Asu, you're quite a reasonable man. Zhou Zishu only smiled at that. Wen Kexing's next question sounded like he was talking to himself. Can a despicable man also be piteous? Of course. Zhou Zishu answered. Wen Kexing nodded to himself, uncaring about Zhou Zishu's possible scrutiny. He then gave a solemn comment. Asu, I just realize even though you may not be beautiful, you still suit my taste just fine. Zhou Zishu's mouth twitched. He knew that this man could never stay serious for long before reverting back to his lecherous ways. He chose to ignore him. Wen Kexing propped himself up on one elbow, looking up to Zhou Zishu all smiling. Seeing that you adore my late parents that much, you should just follow me from now on. We can travel across Jianghu together and then retreat to somewhere just like them, no need to be thinking about dying tomorrow. I don't mind being with you at all, so what do you say? Zhou Zishu's expression remained unchanged. Apologies, but I don't really deserve such appreciation from Brother Wen. Wen Kexing cackled, and in a degenerate fashion enjoyed very much that Zhou Zishu seemed terribly annoyed with him to the point of breaking the wooden fire stick in his hand but had to resorted to the silent treatment as there was no outlet to vent the frustration. He felt incredibly good about himself, having shamelessly delighted in other people's misery. The next morning, Zhang Chengling returned the robe to Zhou Zishu with a tiny voice. Thank you, Shifu. Zhou Zishu took it and spared him a look. Come on, we're going back to the Gaos. Zhang Chengling stopped walking, then continued to follow him like a scorned young bride. Wen Kexing ignored that and consoled him. Your Shifu seems pretty determined to mingle with those heroes and be in cahoots with them. He's still staying with the Gaos at the moment, so for now you should just follow Sir Zhao, you can still look for him whenever you want. He quickly added, of course, you can always seek me out too. Zhou Zishu spoke up while staying ahead of them. When did I ever say that I want to mingle with those people? Wen Kexing rubbed his chin, simpering. So you're not staying? Zhou Zishu frowned. Not staying. Wen Kexing threw Zhang Chengling a glance. For real? For real? Unprompted, Zhou Zishu looked at Zhang Chengling. The boy was staring at him unblinkingly, his eyes similar to that of a skittish rabbit, face showing restrained hope. The moment their eyes met, his lips thinned as he feigned seriousness. At a loss for words, Zhou Zishu merely grunted and kept walking. Wen Kexing, eager to add fuel to the fire, patted the boy's head and exclaimed, Hey Asu, do you think we look like a family of three? Zhou Zishu's steps quickened. With a serious father-like charade, Wen Kexing said to Zhang Chengling gently, since journey is long and there's nothing to do anyway, how about I tell you a story? Zhang Chengling nodded like the well-behaved child he was. Wen Kexing began smugly, once upon a time, there was a demon child living at the foot of Mount Wuxing with other demons and ghosts. Of course, the child despised his kind, since all they did was causing troubles. He seemed to have a talent with storytelling. Ahead of them, Zhou Zishu heard Wen Kexing's melodic voice rendering the foolish young boy absolutely awed. He became conscious of the fact that despicable Wen could very well be a traveling tale teller. The red child knew that he was an individual with exceptional heritage. His mother was a white snake spirit who was called the White Maiden. She had a love affair with a human, and when a monk named FarAway found out, he sealed her under Mount Hua. Zhou Zishu suddenly tripped over a stone and almost fell head first to the ground. The red child wanted to break the mountain apart to save his mother, but the monk asked for the immortal's help to stop him. The child had the upper hand, but what he didn't anticipate was that the ghosts he lived with also betrayed him and wanted him dead. Zhou Zishu had nothing to comment at this point. Zhang Chengling was still rapt with attention. Why is that? Wen Kexing answered. Because there was a big secret. The snake spirit was actually not a spirit at all, she was a mere mortal with some cultivation in her. But somehow rumors got out, and she was treated like a demon and was sealed under the mountain. Say, if she was ever released, then wouldn't their family be all normal people? Wouldn't the child be just an ordinary mortal then? Zhang Chengling listened to him dumbly. Ah, mortal. I still don't understand. Wen Kexing laughed, silly child. If you're of a different race, your heart will be different from us. Zhou Zishu startled, an idea vaguely forming in his head, and went away before he had the chance to delve further into it. He heard Zhang Chengling ask, then did the red child die? Was the mountain destroyed? After thinking it over, Wen Kexing asked him back, I haven't thought that part up yet, what's your idea? Zhang Chengling's answer was absolute. Of course he defeated the demons, saved his mother and became an invincible hero. Wen Kexing added, maybe. But that's boring, most versions ended that way. What if the red child became an ordinary man from then on, no longer possessing his magical powers? Zhang Chengling awed, feeling like this ending was somewhat pitiful but couldn't explain why. He glanced at Wen Kexing, deciding that this senior was not that bad and having the urge to befriend him. He probed, will you tell me another story, then? Wen Kexing, finally found a loyal listener, appreciated the boy's admiration. Consequentially, he continued to ramble on, from the tales of the owl with the red water bowl, to Zhang Xia fighting the white bone spirit, to Kui Ying throwing her beauty trunk into the water out of rage, and so on. His strange and interesting tales lasted all the way to Dongting. Once the three have arrived at the Gao's manor, they ran into Cao Weining. Zhang Chengling's appearance surprised him, and he called out, oh dear, young master, to where did you follow these two? Sir Zhao was driven half-mad trying to find you. Zhou Zishu said, we coincidentally found him running outside on his own, so we chased after him. We didn't have time to warn anyone beforehand, and Cao Weining tugged him inside before he could finish. You missed the big news, quick, come inside. Everyone is a mess fighting each other right now. End chapter. FarAway Wanderers. Chapter 24. Ghost Face. Zhou Zishu had absolutely no interest in all of this, it wouldn't bother him in the slightest even if they beat each other to death. The only thing he wanted to do at the moment was to find a tavern to resupply his empty wine pot, then look for a place to sleep away the red boy broke the mountain to save White Snake tale he just heard. He gracefully slipped out of Cao Weining's hold and explained. How about we bring the kid back to Sir Zhao first? Cao Weining smacked his head. Right, I almost forgot. The young man turned to Zhang Chengling, his perpetually transparent expression showing a strange sort of pity. He sighed and patted Zhang Chengling's shoulder, you have suffered too much for someone so young. Be careful next time, all right. Since he and the boy were not that acquainted, the younger just stood there ignorantly. Wen Kexing were quick to react as he cut in, what is it, are these people still quarreling over the lapis armor? Are they being suspicious of the Zhang family? He glanced at Zhang Chengling and stopped there. Cao Weining explained everything, since the trio wasn't considered outsiders in his eyes. This is the worst time for you all to be messing around out there. There was a big commotion yesterday. Everything exploded the moment Feng Xiaofeng mentioned the armor, so much that Sir Gao and Abbot Xiaomu could barely contain the uproar. There were many who started to harbor other intentions towards it, like Yu Zhifeng, the patriarch of Huashan sect, who was the first to question Sir Zhaojing about whether the latter had taken the Zhang's piece of lapis for himself and caused his son's death. After some thoughts, Cao Weining continued in a dull tone, like he was repeating the words from someone else. Yu Zhifeng was crying and sniveling as if this was a funeral or something. Yimei, Kong Tong, and Keng Shan sects were all on good terms with Huashan, so they sided with Yu Zhifeng. Not only did they question about the murders that happened outside the Zhao's holdings, the lot of Feng Xiaofeng also further fueled the fire, so a brawl started as a result. Some wanted Sir Gao to give an explanation for the ghost's sudden appearance in Jianghu, as well as what the lapis armor actually was. Wen Kexing and Zhou Zishu looked at Cao Weining with amusement. How did this slow-witted kid suddenly get so eloquent after just a day? Cao Weining coughed. Those were the words of my uncle master. As for the details of the quarrels, I don't really understand either. No wonder he said it that way. Zhou Zishu suddenly said to Zhang Chengling, "Do you happen to know anything, kid? Otherwise your room wouldn't have been set aflame and the scorpions wouldn't be out for your life." Zhang Chengling stared at him dumbly and shook his head. Zhou Zishu looked disdainful, having enough of this foolishness. He ignored the boy and turned to Cao Weining. "It would do us a great service if brother Cao brings him back to Sir Zhao." Then he immediately turned and walked away, showing no interest in the current chaos. Zhang Chengling's eyes followed his figure, mouth pursed. All of a sudden he felt a hand rubbing his hair. He looked up, and once he saw Wen Kexing smiling, he said awkwardly, "Sir." Wen Kexing said, "Do you know why he fakes all of his composure and elegance with other people and only shows his impatient side to you?" Zhang Chengling's head lowered as he mumbled, "Because I'm too dumb." Wen Kexing laughed. "Nah, you're only moderately stupid, not that stupid. He doesn't wear a facade around you because he wants to befriend you, he just won't say it out loud because he's shy." Zhang Chengling was taken aback. "Really?" With his eyes narrowed in mirth, Wen Kexing stared at Zhou Zishu's back. He said unconcernedly, "His parents might be the ones who gave birth to him, but the one who knows him best is himself. Other than that, his only soulmate is me, so of course I'm not lying." The man's severe internal injuries, his disguise, his habit of disappearing out of the blue, his kung fu, his vast knowledge of Jianghu's matters inside out, except for Tianchuang, he had no other explanations. But if he really was from Tianchuang, how did he escape the punishment of those monstrous nails of 7 apertures for 3 autumns? After a few days stuck with this puzzling question, Wen Kexing came to a revelation. The important thing here was not how he escaped them, but that he knew how to escape. "Oh dear, I'm afraid I'm tagging along with a big shot," he thought. Before Zhang Chengling could fully take in what he meant, they heard a clueless Cao Weining lamented beside them. "I always feel like you two being together is a little strange, considering that you are both men, but after today I have finally understood, being men or women has nothing to do with someone who is able to understand you with a mere few words, someone who can complete you like a pair of immortal soulmates." He continued smugly. "There is a poem that goes as such, 'What is love, O world? That makes those birds swear a bond till their death?' The cherry blossom pond was thousands of miles deep, but can't be compared." He couldn't remember what it was that it couldn't compare to, and turned incredibly embarrassed. Since he tried his hardest but couldn't recall anything else, he said the rest under his breath and commented, "This poem by Sir Du Fu, though somewhat hard to understand, is still a very moving piece." Zhang Chengling and Wen Kexing looked at him with odd expressions. Wen Kexing only replied after a good while. "Qing Feng sect educates such well-rounded disciples, how admirable." Cao Weining, modest as he was, smiled sheepishly at the praise. "It's nothing. My master says that reading to people in Jianghu is pointless anyway, and there's no hope that anyone will ever pass the court official examination with flying colors. It's enough to know a few words here and there, and one should focus on honing their kung fu instead. I only read a book or two, that's just my shallow understanding. Wen Kexing felt like this shallow understanding was actually quite fascinating. The two brought Zhang Chengling back to a Zhaojing who had almost gone mad out of worry. The elder asked him anything and everything while Wen Kexing turned a blind eye. This old man might be a sly fox, but he did have concern for his late friend's son. He silently left, but the moment his back was facing them, he saw someone staring right at him. Wen Kexing stopped walking, and in that man's eyes there was an insidious light glinting, like that of a mad dog that was about to pounce. Wen Kexing saw Cao Weining greeting him respectfully, and knew that was his uncle master, the infamous ill-tempered Mo Huikong of Qing Feng sect. Mo Huikong was listening to Cao Weining rambling and looked to the direction the young man was pointing at to face Wen Kexing. At first glance he felt a sense of familiarity, then those deep, dark eyes caused him a pinch of alarm, but he couldn't pinpoint why. In his astonishment, he saw Wen Kexing smile back at him. He grunted when Cao Weining started to describe how well acquainted he was with another man, sensing that this Wen Kexing was no good at all. He turned to shout at Cao Weining, "Will you stop it already?" Cao Weining swallowed the rest of his words, wishing he could sew his mouth shut. Only at nightfall did Zhou Zisha finish with his meals. He was leaning on the tavern's balcony rails, taking small sips of wine when someone walked in and said something to the person sitting in the table next to him. Both then paid for their food and left. Zhou Zishu opened his eyes wider as he realized half of the tavern was gone already. He pulled a random young man to his side and asked, "What happened?" "We just got news that the Gao's manor has successfully captured a ghost, and they are going to do a public execution." Zhou Zishu's brows creased. Gao Chong had captured a ghost? At this moment he no longer had doubts about the ghost's appearance, but what was the Ghost Valley's intention for doing all of this? Those were the ones who had caused despicable crimes when they were still living among others and had to enter the valley to seek refuge. Wouldn't they be afraid of acting in broad daylight again? Was the lapis armor really hiding some kind of big secret, so terrible that it could lure even the ghosts out of the valley and make the well-spoken Sir Gao clam up and use such a stupid trick to divert people's attention? Still deep in thoughts, Zhou Zisha knocked into someone on his way downstairs. He muttered an apology, but once looking up, he was stunned. It was the disciple of Monk Gu with his otherworldly aura. There was a sudden thought popping up in his head, even he has to consume rice after all? Monk Gu's disciple said, "It's nothing," and smoothed down his clothes. He took the initiative. "I heard the young man from Qingfeng said that you were the one who escorted the Zhang's descendant to Taihu. A pleasure to meet you, my name is Ye Bai." He was not at all similar to Gao Chong, who was a much more sociable individual. Around him was an air of detachment from every mortal matter, almost made him feel like he didn't exist. Not to mention, there was also a strange feeling of dissonance about him. Zhou Zisha was surprised and puzzled that such a person would speak to him first, so he habitually resorted to empty pleasantries as replies. Ye Bai paid no mind to those, looking at him with indifference. His next sentence was, "I see that your breathing is stagnant and your movements are heavy. Whatever you're burdened with is now beyond cure. But how strange is it that someone like you can possess such a vital spirit?" Zhou Zisha fell silent. He felt like this man must have cultivated his immortal aura in Mount Chongming for so long that he no longer spoke the human way, just like his master. After some thoughts, Ye Bai inquired further, "How much time do you have left? 3 years? 2 years?" At this topic, Zhou Zisha felt like neither refusal nor acquiescence was the right answer. He smiled stiffly, "How keen-eyed you are, brother Ye, no wonder." It was as if Ye Bai was wearing filtering nets on his ears as he shot down all of that nonsense. He didn't wait for Zhou Zisha to finish before replying, "Everyone who are near death will at least show some signs and have to endure suffering beyond words, but you're still here indulging in luxuries. This shows that you definitely have some serious experience under your belt, since when did such individuals emerge in our pugilist scene?" Then he turned and walked away, completely ignoring Zhou's issue. After having left a great distance between them, he seemed to remember something and turned his head back towards the man behind him. "If you don't mind, treat me to wine someday." As if doing that would be one of my greatest life achievements or something, Zhou Zishu thought silently. He followed the majority of people to the Gao's manor to see what this legendary ghost was all about, and saw nothing but a middle-aged fierce-looking man being tied up in front of them, so this was what it felt like to watch a public execution. The ghost's upper body was naked intentionally to show the feral ghost face on his back, indicating that this one must be the real deal. While Zhou Zishu was spacing out, a hand quietly landed on his shoulder. Wen Kexing appeared out of nowhere, smiling at him sweetly. "I've looked for you all day, where did you go?" Ignoring the question, Zhou Zishu pointed to the man. "Do you think he's a real ghost or not?" Wen Kexing looked at that direction he was pointing to, disagreeing. The ghost face indicates that one is no longer able to show his face in broad daylight, who would casually tattoo it on their back without reasons. Though, this unfortunate pal could also have caused offense to someone, and that person could have framed him and thrown him out here to execute publicly. His words were casual, but many things were revealed to Zhou Zishu. Tattooing the ghost face required a special pigment from a plant called the nether plant, which only existed in the Ghost Valley. Furthermore, not everyone who entered the Ghost Valley survived, just like not all spirits of the dead could reincarnate or turn into ghosts. They might very well suffer being eradicated completely from the world. That place was an exclusively dog-eat-dog world, and you had to be vigilant of your surroundings to remain alive and earn yourself such a tattoo. Zhou Zishu stared at the tattooed man pensively. At that moment, the tension was palpable among the crowd, and someone of Huashan sect had suggested burning this person alive. He suddenly turned away, making his way through the crowd and left briskly. End chapter.